The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Monday, the beginning of another week in the Riv.
Another week and another bunch of headaches, I guess.
Yep.
Just for a programming note that I'd like to make clear now, and I'll probably remind afterwards. Wednesday, there will not be a show. I have family business that must be taking care of the services for my dad. So Chip and I have agreed that there will not be a show on Wednesday. We will rebroadcast either this show or one of our previous shows for Wednesday. And I'm very sorry, and I know that you will go through withdrawal from this.
Yeah, but obviously that takes precedent.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, how many people read about our dollar store politicians? I love that. I love that, dollar store politicians. And he opens it up with, "Nothing orderly about our dollar store politicians." That was the headline. But the opening line said, "Orderly transfers of power aren't what we get in Fall River, where the surprise packages keep showing up like it's Christmas morning in hell." I'm telling you, Marc's getting better and better every week. It's just, just amazing.
Yeah, well, again, it segues into the whole, lack of order in our government. And,
and we don't expect anything less at this point.
It's a sad commentary, but the reality is it's come to be the norm. That's what we do in this society. When we can't deal with something, we give it a label, and then we make it the norm.
Exactly. And I got a lot of headache from the weekend flush this Sunday because I'm picking on, quote-unquote, the church. And people are missing the fact that I'm not picking on the church. I'm picking on the administration. I'm picking on the city council. I'm picking on our city government. And I'm not picking on them. I'm pointing something out. Bless you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Gesundheit.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm pointing something out, that they're violating the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution. And they've been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money. When you consider that in 2015, $30,000 in police overtime was spent by the city of Fall River just for this great feast. And they're a nonprofit, allegedly, although most of the money that they raise is spent on huge booze parties. You've also got running simultaneously the boat races, which is a for-profit entity. And who's paying those bills? Who's paying for the Coast Guard? Who's paying for our harbor master? Who's paying for the police? Who's paying for all of that? Okay, probably the city. And I'm looking into that now as well. Because remember, this is from Mike Lund. Mike Lund, the man who didn't even pay a full water bill.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And it gets more, when people look at this, they look at the little snapshot. They have myopia. They're just focused in on what you're saying, and they take exception because they feel you're attacking the church. But this is a fundamental issue of government. We saw what happened in Virginia. And this is fundamentally what we're talking about. The Constitution, constitutional rights, and there is a separation of church and state. And to maintain order in this country, we have to apply the Constitution, whether we like it or not. I'll remind everybody that the American Civil Liberties Union, that has many Jewish lawyers, defended the American Nazi Party's right to have a demonstration many years ago, and that was, to me, the height of what America is. It's about the right that you have a right you have that right, even if it makes you an idiot. So you have the right. The thing is, you have a right to a peaceful demonstration.
That's right.
And what disturbs me about this whole thing is mainstream media politicizing this thing.
Oh, everything's got to be politicized.
It's politicized. They're talking about the president wasn't strong enough, and he should have condemned the white. Yeah, he should have condemned the white supremacists. But the reality is there was trouble there. If it stayed a peaceful demonstration, which it should have, there would have been no problems. Yeah, everybody's appalled. You can be appalled that we have neo-Nazis in this country, but unfortunately they have a right to freedom of choice in this country. And as long as they don't interfere with us or commit a criminal act, that's what makes America great. You have the right to be an idiot, basically. And so what did they do? They began to politicize it. They talked about, but let's face the reality of what happened there. If you got the American Nazi Party demonstrating and a whole bunch of people from the other side go down to a rally, chances are there's going to be problems. Now, did they have enough police there? Did they separate them? I don't think so. But the reality is, you knew it was going to happen. Let's face it. Let's flip this scenario. If this was the 1960s and the Black Panther Party was having a rally, if a bunch of Ku Klux Klan people showed up and you didn't believe, if the betting odds in Vegas weren't 100 to 1 that it was going to be violence at some point during that rally, you've got to be nuts. You've got to be absolutely, you've got to have your head so far up your derriere that you're going to suffocate. The reality is we have freedom of speech, and with that freedom of speech, we unfortunately have to assume the burden of maintaining that freedom. And I don't know what happened down there, but I can tell you one thing. When they knew this was going to happen, they should have kept a very large zone, we'll call it a free fire zone, between those two groups to ensure that all they had was yelling at each other, which is not going to, it's not going to do anything. But once they began to have face-to-face confrontations, all it takes is one person to blink, one person to make a perceived aggressive move, and then we've got what we've got. This is the society we live in today. And in the old days, people used to have a fist fight and it was over. Now they run you over with cars and they, and
they shoot you.
And they shoot you and they stab you and they do all kinds of other things. But, it's kind of an indication. But to get back to the main issue here, what you wrote is fundamentally just an extension of people's rights.
Exactly.
You didn't, this is not attacking the church. The fact that you said that there is a separation and we shouldn't be paying for this. This country was created by people who left Europe to escape religious persecution. So the fact is, that is probably one of the most important things that they put in our Constitution, because everybody that came here was being persecuted by the Church of England, and they came here to escape it. So what they said was, we have all these different religious groups who came here, the Quakers and the
Jewish, the Muslims, the Hindus,
and everybody came.
Yeah.
I don't know if too many Muslims came over, but they might have been. They might have been from Spain, some of the Moors. But the reality is, there was a whole group, Seventh-day Adventists and whatever. The fact is that these people all came here to escape religion. So they fashioned this country so each individual group could practice their own religion without interference from the government.
Right.
And with that quid pro quo, the government cannot support or endorse any particular religion. That's
Correct.
the foundation of this nation, just as freedom of speech is. So, you know, the issue that, you know, what happened in Virginia was deplorable, but the fact is that, you know, we forget because of they politicize everything. Both of those groups had every right, as much as we could disagree with both sides or, you know, and have your own perspective, they had the right to go down there and yell and scream and complain and demonstrate as long as they kept it peaceful. And the reality is what happened, and the violence was then violence, and who started it, we don't know. So what we have to do is look at that and remind everybody, not politicize it. Oh, he didn't condemn this group, or he should have condemned this group more. What we got to say is, if you want to demonstrate, be more like Gandhi than Joe Stalin.
That's right.
You know, be like Gandhi and have a peaceful protest rather than be like Joe Stalin and then protest by shooting all your opponents.
It's the truth. And, you know, I opened up my column with a quote from James Madison, you know.
Yeah.
The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. I mean, you can't make it any clearer. This is one of our founding fathers who said this.
Yeah.
And again, as you said, everyone has a right to their opinion. They have a right to express their opinion. They have the First Amendment right. But, you know, it's funny that when it comes to an abortion clinic, I'm bringing up another controversial issue.
Oh,
my
there
God.
you go.
There you
Oh,
go.
boy, that's a bad one.
They have a demilitarized zone around abortion clinics. You can't protest. You've got to be across the street.
Yep.
You cannot be within, I don't know, 500, 750 feet of an abortion clinic door.
Yeah.
So they have a demilitarized zone. They have an area, it's a whole street, keeping people separate. And the court said they have the right to do that. But to prevent problems, they said, we're going to give them this demilitarized zone. The same thing should have happened in Virginia.
You're right. And the other fact, you know, as he said, I guess James Madison actually remembered the Crusades.
Right.
I mean, he's right. Europe was soaked in blood, and it's been soaked in blood in a not too distant past. What was Ireland? What was Ireland? All the deaths in Ireland were caused by the Orange men, the Protestants fighting the Catholic Irish.
That's right.
Same nationality, same color. Yet they still were killing each other over what? Religion. Religion has always been a problem. We see the Muslims killing each other than killing us, and you know that's the reality. And as he said, nobody could put it better than Madison. You know, to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife. That's it. The ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries.
Right.
And it soaks this nation in blood, too. We see what's happened with the Muslim and stuff. Everybody should be, you know, the premise of this country is great, founded on that great. But then it's up to us to maintain what the intent of that was, to allow everybody to practice in peace. And if they're not practicing their religion in peace, then you have to do something and do something vigorously. The way to do it is not to have senators on TV basically trying to, these people who are constitutionalists, who claim they are, some of these Republican senators are on there basically saying that, you know, we should not have the American Nazi Party in the United States. There shouldn't be Nazis. We fought the Second World War. And guess what? You're right. We fought the Second World War to beat Hitler and the Nazis. But we also fought that for the freedom of the rest of the world. And that freedom included practicing whatever you want. And the fact is, whether you agree or disagree with neo-Nazis, we have to take the good and the bad with the Constitution. The good is we get to practice whatever religion we want. The bad is people like that get to practice that. And that's just the fact. And it should not be a political issue. This transcends political issues. This is a constitutional issue. And, you know, it's amazing that someone in the 1700s and all our founding fathers knew this. So obviously, some things don't change, and the bloodshed over religion continues now in the 21st century. That was happening back in the 14th century.
Seems that men cannot win.
This is the reason that we've set this nation up. And CJ, you were 100% right. This is the reason we absolutely have to demand. I don't have anything against the Holy Ghost feast. Doesn't bring any money to the city. But the fact is, there has to be a separation of church and state, because you can't pay a church's bills. You are endorsing that church over other religions. So what happens if there's a voodoo cult hidden somewhere away in the Flint, probably, yeah, or the South End, and they decide to have a voodoo festival? So now the taxpayers have to pick up the bills for every. No, there's a separation of church and state, and that should be the most critical issue. That we're looking at here. This is a very, what happened in Virginia is resurfacing something that's very, very important here. We cannot allow religion to be melded in with government. We've seen what happens in the Middle East when you allow religious clerics to run the government.
That's right.
And this is what we have to do, and it's crazy. So I know you probably got some heat, and they think now you are now. I guess you're now the Antichrist or something. I don't know what you are, but
hey, you know what? I'm exercising my First Amendment right.
That's right, and I understand your perspective.
Okay. You brought up World War II. Well, today is the official anniversary of VJ Day.
Yeah,
oh, another unpolitically correct term, VJ Day.
Yeah. I don't know why it's politically incorrect.
It's politically incorrect according to Tim Nisi over at Channel 12, because the Japanese community is highly offended by the fact that that's what it is. That was the day the Japanese surrendered, which was today. And that's why Rhode Island passed 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 pieces of legislation forbidding the name VJ Day for today, because today is a state holiday in the state of Rhode Island. They won't let go of it. The only state in the Union which still celebrates Victory Day or VJ Day.
Well, so I mean, look, we're far too sensitive. I mean, look, it was the victory over Japan.
That's right.
We were fighting Japan in the South Pacific, and we defeated Japan. Do I agree with that's something that I've always had a problem with, because we did, in fact. I think the Japanese Americans and a historian should be more concerned about the fact that the Japanese Americans that were here in the United States were put in internment camps and discriminated against, when the European Germans and parts of the Axis, the Italians and the Germans, were not put in internment camps. It showed a prejudice in this nation. And ironically enough, as I've said before, the most decorated unit in the European theater of operation, because they wouldn't allow them to go fight in the South Pacific, was a 100% Japanese American unit. They had more Medal of Honor winners than any other unit, and more medals and more decorations than any other. They fought with tremendous valor and tremendous bravery, and they honored their country, with many of whom with the supreme sacrifice, while their children and their wives were in internment camps. I think that's more important. Yeah, it's like saying we didn't have a victory. We didn't have a victory over Britain in the Revolutionary War. So I guess we could never say that we beat England, but we did twice, actually. So it's ludicrous. Let's deal with the real issues here. The issues of how human beings treat other human beings. We didn't drop an A-bomb on Munich or Berlin or both. We didn't hesitate to drop a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and incinerate everybody on the ground. There was no concern about collateral damage there. And the question always has been in my mind, if we did it in Japan, would we have done it in Europe? I don't think so, because we didn't put the Germans and Italians in camps, but we put the Japanese in camps. And as I said, most of whom served their country. So, you know, this is a whole thing. It's VJ Day. Well, you can call it what you want. It's the day that Japan officially surrendered. So we had a victory over Japan. I'm sure that Japan still realizes at one time they did beat the Russians. So I don't know what they call that day in Japan, but they are fully cognizant of who they beat. So, you know, way too much political correctness in a society and not enough humanity. That's the problem.
I agree. I agree. So, Chip, you want to join a private club to get stoned?
No, I'll pass on that one. I'm high on life here.
A private club that consumes marijuana is being planned for the Flint neighborhood at the former Health First building on County Street. That's 102 County Street for those wondering, so you can rush and get your membership applications in. According to the agenda for the next Zoning Board of Appeals hearing scheduled to be held Thursday, August 17th, Robert Robillard will appear in front of the board seeking a special permit request to open a private organization for the consumption of marijuana at 102 County Street. City deed records indicate the building's owner is Maria Paiva, LLC, who purchased the property back in October of 2014 for $157,500. Now, the zoning board is only allowed by law, although the law doesn't apply to Fall River because they do it all the time, to change zoning variances, to grant a variance to zoning for hardship and for topography, soil, dirt, that type of stuff. Not because you bought it and you want to use it for this, but they do it every time. They violate the law. Every appeal that's ever been made on a zoning board decision has always been struck. The zoning variance has always been struck down. They have battled, every battle they've had in court, not in Fall River, but across the state, has their zoning variances have been struck down because they can only be for two reasons, topography or hardship. And the courts have ruled that hardship can't be something you created. You bought the building knowing the zoning. Therefore, you can't say, well, I don't want to use it for that. I want to use it for this. Doesn't matter. You can't. That's the zoning. You don't like it, too bad. But again, you have a bunch of lawyers. You have at least 2 lawyers on our zoning board which thinks the law doesn't apply to them. You know, maybe if citizens were allowed to file malpractice complaints against lawyers like that work on like the zoning board for violating the law, maybe there'd be less violation of the law in this state. I'll tell you, makes me sick.
Yeah.
Makes me sick. Just what Fall River needs in one of the highest crime areas in the state, it seems. But I know in Fall River it is. The highest crime areas, that's kind of like our old Harlem. You know what I mean? That's where all the prostitution, the drug dealing, all that, even the housing problems that have existed there. Hopefully they've been fixed now. But that area is already tough. So we're going to bring in people to privately consume marijuana.
And what's going to happen when they get through? Are they going to have Uber take them home, or are they going to get into their vehicles impaired? Is anybody going to ask those questions? It's like, that's just what I want to do: drive down County Street and get into a head-on collision with somebody that's so high that their brain's still in the mill.
Right. And then what will happen with the private marijuana consumption? We're going to put liquor in there too. Where does it stop? Where does it stop? That's one of the biggest problems we have. We never know when to stop. Well, Fall River Market Basket's hiring 400 people. I guess they're having a hard time because they've been hiring 400 people for a while now.
Yeah.
And they've been training them in New Bedford. But they're gonna be here in Fall River Monday through Saturday this week, and they're going to be recruiting people for applications. Market Basket is moving into a new building at the east end of the South Coast Marketplace in the space last occupied by Kmart at the end of the plaza. So I'm wondering, they're going to be accepting applications behind the Burger King and they're going to be interviewing people there. So if you're looking for a job at Market Basket, go today. You can is starting the kickoff. Go over to Burger King and apply for a job at Market Basket. They're looking for 400 people. Hopefully you can get to New Bedford because I believe that's where they're going to be training most of those people. And this store is looking to open early this fall. It used to be August. Now I guess they moved it to September. I don't think they're going to go too much further past September because the holidays are coming up quick and they want to be in place to handle that
yeah,
sale.
well, hopefully people will get down there and get some jobs, and we'll get some Fall River people working. But again, it's another example of what we say about our economic plan being a little dysfunctional, because while it's nice to hire 400 people, how many, you and I both know that the Stop and Shop in the South End is barely surviving.
Right.
And a Market Basket will probably ultimately drive that market, which is a taxpayer and has been a taxpayer for decades, out of the community. It'll be closed, and all the people who work there, most of whom are from Fall River, will be out of a job, and then they won't be able to get a job at Market Basket because all the jobs at Market Basket will be filled.
That's right.
So this is one of the problems. Look, I mean, competition is okay, but, you know, you got to remember that they're getting a tiff, too.
A big tiff.
A big tiff. So,
And
number one, we're losing, we most likely will lose a taxpayer, a tax-paying property that employs people, and we get a non-tax-paying that employs people. So is it truly any kind of benefit? It's not a benefit to the taxpayers.
And how many of those people are going to actually live in Fall River and spend money in Fall River?
Yeah.
That's the key.
That's one of the major problems that we have. That
Exactly.
we don't, that, you know, if they get a job there, they, you know, they probably, if they live here, will move out now because they got a steady paycheck.
Well, the King Philip Mill people severed their ties with their New York underwriter, which is their finance portion. They want to move ahead with their project, but how are they going to do that without money? This is, you know, everything works with money. Money, 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 you know? Money, money, money by the pound.
Yeah,
and you know, I admire this. I admire Mr. DeRosa's fortitude on trying to push this project forward. But I think Mr. DeRosa needs to be very realistic. And also the city needs to be realistic. You know why? They still don't have a signed purchase and signed quitclaim deed. Why does this city take months and years to sell a property? Why do they take so long? You know what? I closed on my house 90 days later, not even 90 days actually, it was 45 days later, I signed the paperwork, I got my quitclaim deed. How come the city takes a year? How come they give out a purchase and sale 5 or 6 months for a property, a potential property owner, to review the property like they did for David Hebert? Oh, you're politically connected? Maybe that's why Mr. DeRosa's getting such a long time, because the mayor was so far up his derriere, okay, that he was walking by smelling like roses. This is the problem we have in Fall River. The standards of business, the standards practices of businesses are only applied when necessary, not when they're inconvenient to the elected monarchy. And that is a problem in and of itself. We cannot have that type of problem.
And we have it, and everything's always a problem because they never, you know, every I and every I should be dotted, every T should be crossed before you enter into any kind of agreement. But that's we rush to make it look like a public, a public relations thing, so we can have a press conference. But it says in this article, which is the Herald News article by Joe Good, in an email to City Administrator Kathy Ann Viveris, Weiss indicates that if the city could not accommodate alterations to the terms, the FRAR would no longer be responsible for the cost of the fire watch at the mill complex.
Right.
So now the city's going to pick up the tab to make sure that the south end doesn't have a major fire. Again, we have to pick up the tab for these people.
Yep.
I'm telling you, it just doesn't get any more confused than that. Welcome to the Riv. And stay angry, everybody.
Stay angry, and we'll see you on Friday. Have a great day and a great week.